NXT lost the war, and it's all Triple H's fault, but that's okay because Vince McMahon and the lads are heading in now to fix NXT, and according to a load of articles that were going around last week, they're going to have a new system with new rules over who they use on shows, and the rules appear to be as follows. No midgets, no grandparents. So we're going to take over the booking from here on out, and to be specific, the rules are no one older than 29, no one under 6 foot, and I'm going to add in no one with allegations against them because I don't want those people in my videos. We'll start with week 1, but before we begin, I just want to say that, as the saying goes, we're not here to take over, we're here to take part, so I'm going to remove all NXT TakeOver events. We're going to focus solely on TV, and we're making TV 1 hour long again. So after removing everyone that doesn't fit the criteria, we actually still have quite a stacked roster. We've Karrion Kross, we've Odyssey Jones. So now we get into the show. I forgot to mention we're doing this on TEW, so we'll have feedback for how well every show is received. But we start anyway with Karrion Kross and Odyssey Jones backstage. Karrion Kross says, "You're a bit of a bitch," and Odyssey Jones says, "Actually, you're a bit of a bitch." Then we cut to a video package for Karrion Kross, kind of hyping him up about how great he is. Then Odyssey Jones does an interview where he says he hates Karrion Kross and thinks he's a bitch. Then we get a video package with Odyssey Jones, hyping him up, kind of talking about how great he is. Then we cut to a Karrion Kross interview where he talks about how much he hates Odyssey Jones and thinks he's a bitch. Then we go out to the ring and we have a Karrion Kross and Odyssey Jones contract signing for a match that'll take place later on that night. And then we have the main event, which is Karrion Kross versus Odyssey Jones, where the winner is Odyssey Jones. Now, I know what you're thinking, Kian, that is an amazing show. Of course it is, but for some reason it didn't really go down too well. I think it's because I was using old data and Odyssey Jones wasn't in the game, so I had to add him in myself and then forgot to do any of his stats. I also used Norman Smiley for all the backstage interviews, and that didn't go down too well. I don't know why I picked Norman Smiley, I kind of just panicked. Week 2. So we start week 2 with a pipe bomb from William Regal. He comes to the ring and he just says, "Women, they're shite. There's not a single 6 foot tall woman out there, so women are banned from NXT." And we start the first round of the NXT World Title Tournament. The first match is Dominick Mysterio coming down to NXT, taking on Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross wins. Then Lewis Howley from NXT UK takes on Mansoor. Mansoor gets the win. Omos comes down to NXT. The big lad Omos takes on August Grey and wins. And Odyssey Jones takes on Chan Bing in the main event and wins. There's a couple of issues here. First of all, our road agent told us that Chan Bing and Odyssey Jones don't have the stamina for this match, despite the fact that it is only an 8-minute match. So I'm going to go ahead with that anyway. I also have to rate William Regal on something specific in his promo. So I've gone with his sex appeal, and we're going to see how that goes. It didn't go very well at all. Actually, there was a couple of issues with it. It got a 3 rating overall. The main event didn't go down too well either. I think the reason for this is because Odyssey Jones got injured on the first show, and I didn't mention it to you because I was just going to ignore it and tell him to get a move on. But it didn't. It kind of backfired a little bit. The fans want more storylines, which I find a bit odd because these storylines are really good, so I don't really see what their issue is. I think the best thing to do from here on out is to just ignore TEW, ignore their feedback, ignore the fans, because you and I both know that these stories are excellent. I think we'll just continue through the rest of the shows on our own. Week 3, and August Grey opens the show and he says, "As a former 205 Live veteran, I'm going to declare myself the Cruiserweight Champion." And he is interrupted by Brandon Kirk. Now, I have had to search far and wide for people who fit these requirements, by the way. But Brandon Kirk, he's in his 20s, over 6 feet tall, I think. I think he's a deathmatch wrestler. So he turns around and he says, "I want to challenge you for that title next week. And when I do, I'm going to rebrand it as the big scary blood belt, the big deathmatch championship." Then we get our first semi-final, Karrion Kross versus Mansoor, and the winner is Karrion Kross, and everyone is in shock. The streak is over. It's an Undertaker-esque reaction. Unbelievable scenes. Then we get our other semi-final, Omos versus Odyssey Jones, and the winner is Odyssey Jones by disqualification, because Omos keeps punching him when he shouldn't, past the count of 5, pretty much gets himself disqualified and murders him. So Odyssey Jones is a wreck, but he's through to the final. And then we go backstage into William Regal's office when out of nowhere, Adam Maxted shows up. And if you don't know who Adam Maxted is, he is an Irish wrestler who was pretty much built from scratch to be in WWE. He was pretty much made in the WWE factory. But when the time came to hire him, they decided not to because he used to be a stripper, which is funny for two reasons. One, they won't hire somebody under any circumstances if they were a stripper, but if they're an alleged sex offender, it's grand. Two, it wasn't even true. He wasn't even a stripper. So he comes into William Regal's office and he says, he just slaps William Regal around, right? He just fucking slaps him around and announces that he'll be back to fight next week. Finally, our main event for the NXT Tag Team Champions Aussie Open versus Injustice versus the Von Erichs. The match ends pretty quickly because Jordan Oliver sticks his middle fingers up at the Von Erichs. This is an instant disqualification. There's no middle fingers allowed under my NXT. So the Von Erichs, they get to walk out as champions. Week 4. We open the show with Adam Maxted making his debut against Richard Holiday, or Richard Vacation as he's known in America. He was mates with MJF back in MLW, but he's better than MJF because he's big. Adam Maxted kills him, but after the match, out comes William Regal, and he is introducing someone to take out Adam Maxted and make a name for themselves. He introduces Omari. If you don't know who Omari is, he's a young wrestler who's very tall, hits the 6 foot requirement. He actually just retired, but I'm going to ignore that because it's very hard to find wrestlers who reach these requirements. Omari shows up and he gets his own unique, terrible NXT name, like Timmy Tollywallop or something like that. And that's the match then for next week. Then we have August Grey versus Brandon Kirk for the Cruiserweight Championship. If Brandon Kirk wins, the title gets rebranded as a deathmatch title, and the winner is August Grey. But he decides to make it a deathmatch title anyway. Then we get a tag team match, a number 1 contenders tag team match for the titles. Aussie Open taking on the returning Authors of Pain, and the Authors of Pain get the win. And in the main event, the final of the NXT World Title Tournament, Cameron Grimes versus Odyssey Jones. Odyssey Jones was murdered the previous week, so he's in a bad way, and Cameron Grimes gets the win. Week 5. The show opens with Omos coming to the ring and saying, look, Cameron Grimes, you only have the title because I killed your opponent the previous week, so now I want your title next week. Then, our first match of the evening, Adam Maxted takes on Timmy Tollywallop. The mercenary sent out to kill him by William Regal, and Adam Maxted gets the win. Then after the match, William Regal comes out and he says, yeah, fair enough. Then August Grey defends his deathmatch title in an unnecessarily violent, gruesome deathmatch against Brian Pillman Jr., and he retains. In the main event for the NXT Tag Team Championships, the Authors of Pain take on the Von Erichs, and the Von Erichs win. The Authors of Pain have bottled it. Week 6. The Authors of Pain are wasting no time at all. They're going straight back to a number 1 contenders match against Injustice. They win. Then August Grey defends his very gruesome, violent, bloody title against Mansoor, and he wins. Then in the main event, Omos takes on Cameron Grimes for the NXT World title, and the winner is Omos. By disqualification, because Cameron Grimes has hired Chan Bing to come in and beat the shit out of him throughout the match. Week 7. August Grey takes on Wheeler Yuta, and again, this could be a very excellent wrestling match, but it's for the deathmatch title, so it's a big, filthy, dirty deathmatch, and August Grey retains. Then, Omos takes on the man that cost him his match last week. He takes on Chan Bing, and the winner is Chan Bing, because of interference from AEW's 6 foot tall, 20-something-year-old Ricky Starks, or as he's now known under his NXT name, Ricky Google. Then we cut backstage and we see Lewis Howley and Isaiah Cassidy. Only one member of each of these tag teams have made it because the other one is under 6 foot tall. They turn around, basically, they become friends and they say, hey, let's form a tag team. Private Party, Pretty Deadly. We'll call it Private Deadly. I don't know, lads. Then we get to the main event. The Authors of Pain get their second chance at the Von Erichs tag team titles, and they bottle it again. Week 8, and we open the show with Akam and Razor standing in the ring, and they're talking to each other, but things are getting pretty serious. Akam's like, look, we've lost twice in a row now, we've bottled it twice, that's not my fucking fault. And Razor says, that is absolutely your fault, I fucking carry this team. Akam's like, no, I carry this team, I fucking carry this team, I'm the fucking Roald Dahl of the Authors of Pain. I couldn't think of any other authors. You get the idea, right? It's a big violent split, and it leads to a match that we'll get to next week. August Grey then takes on Shooter is what we're going to call him. He defends successfully. Then Private Deadly take on Injustice and Aussie Open in a 3-way tag, and they win. Then we get to the main event. Omos and a partner of his choosing take on the search engines, Chan Bing and Ricky Google. If Omos and his partner win, Omos gets one more shot at Cameron Grimes, and if he loses, he can't challenge for the title ever again. And the partner that he chooses is Mansoor, and the crowd are pretty happy with that, and they win. Then we get to week 9, and we open the show with the bloodiest death match in the history of bloody death matches. It is Akam versus Razor, the split in the Authors of Pain, and the winner is Razor. Then we get another death match that's not really as good as the opener, but still pretty decent, as August Grey defends his title again against the deathmatch king, Dominick Mysterio. And Dominick Mysterio wins. He is the king of death matches. He is the new NXT deathmatch champion. And then we get to the co-main event. Private Deadly take on the Von Erichs for the NXT tag team titles, and the winners are the Von Erichs. Then in the main event, Omos finally gets his hands on Cameron Grimes for the NXT World Championship. Omos wins, but after the match, there is a stare down between Omos and Razor from the Authors of Pain. So, overall, I think things are looking pretty good for NXT. We lost our TV deal.